Hey everybody, my name's Justin. This is my Bio 263 project, and I'm going to be talking about relationships between bee activity and weather. So, honeybees, or Apis mellifera, are a vital animal to the health of many ecosystems, as well as the condition of our human crops. So the European honeybee is the most common pollinating bee. However, their population has been declining rapidly due to factors like climate change and pesticide use. Therefore, it's important to make sure that bee populations are able to thrive no matter what environment they live in. So, my study is focused on the health of a single bee population in San Diego, California, and their activity in relation to the weather. Um, Generally, the honeybee's ideal foraging condition is between 55 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit, with greater activity on the hotter end of that range. But they still go out um, of the hive to go and pollinate flowers, even if conditions are not totally perfect. However, with San Diego's um, general hot weather, it is possible that the hive's production would be limited because it could exceed that range quite frequently. As I was doing the experiment, I also noticed that bees had a hard time re-entering the hive when it's really windy, so I decided to add wind speed as a factor. Um, it's important to monitor the health of bees in places like San Diego because it's important that they are able to remain in such places to help the environment and help agricultural areas, and it would also affect us financially if they all disappeared because it'd be hard to find pollinating animals. I hypothesized that there would be a strong correlation between the different weather variables and the number of bees counted. I predicted that bee activity would be represented by a bell curve with the peak around 65 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. But the relationship between bees and wind speed would just simply be a negative linear correlation. So the study was pretty simple. I have a beehive in my backyard. Basically, each day I would just go outside at around 5 p.m. so that no other factors would affect it, like the time of day. I just sit there, I just count bees for 10 minutes, and that's it. I would also record the weather patterns of that day, like temperature, wind speed, things like that. And then, yeah. So I did that for 2 weeks, and then I just took all the data, put it up into R, and then made graphs out of it. And then I used a correlation test to connect the temperature and wind speed and the number of bees spotted. So these are my results. As you can see, there is a strong correlation for both variables. With temperature, it was positive and it had a really high R value, as you can see, and really small p value, which is really good. As for wind speed, it was negative as predicted. It's not quite as significant, and the p value was not as small, but it was still good enough that we could call it significant. As you can see, the number of bees increased a lot past the range of 70 degrees. It only started to drop off past 80, which is, yeah. So my predictions were half correct. I was correct on the wind speed, but not on the temperature, as you can see here again. So I want to talk about the temperature. Even though the ideal range is 55 to 70 for these bees, it doesn't seem to be the case, as it goes past 80. So the reason I came up with this is that maybe they're adapted to the local weather here and they just prefer going out when it's hotter because the weather's just always hot here. Also, my prediction of a bell curve was incorrect, but I think with more data, you could probably come to a better conclusion because you can see it starts to drop off past 80. So maybe if there's like hotter days, we could have seen a bigger bell curve. But yeah, I don't have enough data for that. There's also a connection between temperature and wind speed I want to talk about because it's colder when there's more wind, and both those variables saw less bees coming out. So you can't really conclude which variable affected the bee activity more. They're just kind of both there together. Although this study did shed light on bee activity in this local environment, it could have benefited a lot from more data. Since the weather is like really similar all the time, you would probably have to do it for like year round to get good results on more variances of temperature and wind and precipitation and things like that. There's also issues with the way I recorded the data. Since I just counted it, that's pretty subject to human error. If I had to do it again, I'd probably just use a camera, set it up for 10 minutes and look on the camera so I can like pause and fast forward and slow down and stuff like that. The bee activity was also possibly affected by other variables that I couldn't measure just because I don't have a way to do it. These are things like solar radiation, like whether it's cloudy or not, some local pesticide use, or the proximity of predators that I can't really control and I don't really know how to find out. So a follow-up study that could measure these variables would allow more information on how bees react to the local environment. So I'd like to thank my group members, Alex, Sophia, and Mia, for their help on this, and these are my citations for my project. Thank you for listening.